Arlene Phillips shares heartfelt story of caring for father with Alzheimer's. Arlene Phillips' recent reflections on her father's battle with Alzheimer's disease have reopened a deeply personal chapter of her life, shedding light on the emotional and physical toll that caregiving can impose. Known to millions as a celebrated choreographer and former Strictly Come Dancing judge, Arlene has long been admired for her creativity, discipline, and resilience. Yet behind her public success lies a private story marked by years of responsibility, sacrifice, and heart-wrenching moments as she cared for her father, Abraham, during his gradual decline. His struggle with Alzheimer's, which ultimately claimed his life in 2000, not only reshaped Arlene's life at the time but continues to influence her fears, decisions, and outlook on aging today. In recounting her father's deterioration, from a smart, quick-witted barber to a man unable to recognize his own daughter, Arlene draws attention to the cruel and unrelenting nature of neurodegenerative disease. Her memories reveal a daughter navigating the pressures of a demanding West End career, raising two young children, and fulfilling the role of her father's primary caregiver, all while watching the man who had once been her source of strength slip away piece by piece. She describes scenes that many carers know all too well: misplaced objects, confusion at familiar surroundings, forgotten relationships, sleepless nights, and the overwhelming responsibility of ensuring a loved one is safe. Now, as she enters her 70s, Arlene has spoken candidly about her fear of developing Alzheimer's herself, a fear powerful enough that she admits she would consider going to Dignitas if diagnosed. Her statement, though controversial to some, reflects a deeply felt desire to spare her daughters from the painful burden she once carried. It also opens a broader conversation about autonomy, dignity, and the emotional legacy of caregiving, especially for those who have watched a loved one vanish slowly into the fog of memory loss. Her story arrives at a time when new research has highlighted a hidden health crisis among the UK's 5.8 million unpaid carers, many of whom experience worsening mental and physical health due to their responsibilities. Arlene's voice adds weight and visibility to this crisis, not only because of her celebrity status but because she speaks from lived experience, one shaped first by caring for her mother as a child, and later by the decade-long decline of her father. Through her reflections, Arlene underscores the urgent need to recognize, support, and protect caregivers, whose devotion often comes at great personal cost. Arlene Phillips' story unfolds across decades of caregiving, revealing a pattern of responsibility that began in childhood and followed her well into adulthood. Long before she became the acclaimed choreographer we know today, Arlene had already experienced the emotional weight of looking after a sick parent. As a teenager growing up in Prestwich, Lancashire, she found herself stepping into the role of carer for her mother, Rita, who was diagnosed with leukemia at a time when little was understood about the disease. With her father also unwell and her siblings occupied with their studies, Arlene became the one to wash her mother, manage household chores, and tend to her daily needs. These formative years were marked not only by overwhelming responsibility but also by guilt, particularly surrounding a moment when her mother asked her to miss her dance class, and Arlene refused, hoping to preserve the one joyful outlet she had. That guilt, she admits, has lingered throughout her life and resonates with the experiences of countless young carers who are forced to navigate adulthood far too early. After her mother's death at just 43, Arlene was not even allowed to attend the funeral, a decision that added layers of confusion and emotional distance to an already traumatic period. She was pushed back into school, expected to resume normal life despite having lived through far from normal circumstances. Yet even as she pursued her dreams of dancing, paying for her own lessons with her paper-round earnings, she carried with her the memory of those years spent comforting, supporting, and sacrificing for a parent who depended on her. As an adult, Arlene's caregiving story began again, but this time with a slower, more devastating progression. Her father Abraham started showing subtle signs of Alzheimer's, placing empty pans on lit stoves, attempting to make tea in the kettle, appearing lost even in familiar spaces. At the time, Arlene was juggling intense professional commitments, working on Andrew Lloyd Webber's high-pressure Starlight Express production in the West End, while also raising her daughters, Alana and newborn Abby. Her days became a cycle of relentless movement, rushing to her father's flat before work to bring breakfast, checking in during lunch breaks, returning after rehearsals with dinner, and making late-night visits to ensure he was safely in bed. Her partner, Angus Ion, offered support, but Abraham trusted no one except his daughter, a common reality among dementia patients who cling fiercely to the familiar. As the disease progressed, Arlene witnessed painful changes that left emotional scars still evident today. She describes watching her father transform slowly from a bright, sharp man into someone whose thoughts dissipated until nothing remained. She likens the process to a train going into a tunnel and emerging entirely altered. The moments when he gazed at her without recognition became some of the most devastating of her life, stinging reminders of the intimacy and connection that Alzheimer's cruelly erases. Caring for him alone, with no respite and little external support, left her overwhelmed, isolated, and eventually exhausted. Despite her determination to keep him out of a care home, she eventually reached a breaking point, a decision she describes with deep sadness and the familiar guilt shared by so many carers. Her private struggle reflects a wider societal issue. Millions of unpaid carers in the UK face declining health, emotional burnout, and inadequate support systems. Arlene's willingness to speak out during Caring for Caregivers Week brings visibility to this hidden crisis. She emphasizes that carers often sacrifice sleep, social lives, careers, and personal well-being to care for others, yet their own needs frequently go unnoticed. Having lived that reality twice in her life, Arlene's advocacy comes from a place of profound experience and empathy. Her fears about developing Alzheimer's herself are not abstract, they are rooted in years of grief, loss, and overwhelming responsibility. When she says she would choose dignitas, her words echo not only her personal fears but her determination to protect her daughters from carrying the same emotional burden she bore. For Arlene, the prospect of losing her identity and forcing her loved ones into the difficult position of caregiver is more frightening than death itself. Her reflections illuminate the lingering psychological impact that caregiving can leave long after the loved one has passed, an impact that shapes her views, decisions, and emotional landscape today. Arlene Phillips' journey is not simply the story of a daughter caring for aging parents, it is a deeply human narrative that exposes the emotional, physical, and psychological toll of caregiving across a lifetime. Her experiences highlight the invisible labor carried by millions of people, often silently, often at great personal cost. From her teenage years spent tending to a mother dying of leukemia to the decades she dedicated to supporting her father through Alzheimer's, Arlene has lived at the intersection of love, duty, guilt, and overwhelming exhaustion. These experiences have shaped her identity not only as a caregiver, but as a mother, a woman, and a public figure unafraid to speak openly about subjects many find too painful to confront. In sharing her fears about developing Alzheimer's herself, Arlene is giving voice to a reality that countless carers privately grapple with, the fear of history repeating itself, of becoming the next person to lose autonomy, memory, or identity. Her willingness to consider dignitas underscores the depth of those fears and the emotional residues left behind by years of witnessing slow decline. Rather than a comment rooted in despair, her stance reflects a powerful desire to protect her daughters from going through what she endured, a desire rooted in the selflessness that defined her caregiving journey from the beginning. Arlene's story also serves as a powerful reminder of the urgent need to recognize and support unpaid carers. The recent research revealing a health crisis among the UK's 5.8 million caregivers aligns directly with her lived reality: sleepless nights, physical strain, emotional burnout, social isolation, and an ever-present sense of guilt. Her advocacy during Caring for Caregivers Week shines a light on a group often overlooked in policy discussions, yet essential to the well-being of vulnerable populations. By speaking out, she lends her voice, influence, and personal history to a cause deeply rooted in compassion and necessity. Ultimately, the arc of Arlene Phillips' caregiving life reveals profound truths about love and sacrifice. It shows how caregiving can bind people together while simultaneously draining those who give everything of themselves. It shows how guilt, responsibility, and devotion can coexist in complex, painful ways. And it shows how unresolved emotions from early caregiving experiences can echo decades later, shaping how one views the future. Through her openness, Arlene reminds us that behind every caregiver lies a story, often unspoken, often heavy, but always deeply human. Her narrative encourages society to acknowledge the emotional weight carried by carers, to build systems that better support them, and to honor the profound love that drives their sacrifices. In telling her story, Arlene is not only confronting her own fears, but contributing to a broader understanding of caregiving as both an act of devotion and a burden that no one should have to carry alone.